Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for being with us today. I want to start with the hostages and just the gut-wrenching news that 4 more hostages are, through intelligence, the IDF believes to be dead. Still, their bodies, their remains are in Gaza. And 2 80-year-olds, an 84-year-old, one of them protecting his family in a safe room when he was ripped away from his family. Some of their wives were also taken hostages but released. But now we know they are dead. What can you say about the continued effort, the very difficult effort, obviously, to get the hostages home?
Well, there's 120 hostages, of which, unfortunately, there's 41 confirmed dead or to be murdered by Hamas. We're dealing with the most genocidal terror jihadist organization on earth, and they, are cynical. Will execute our people, and the bottom line is that we can't allow Hamas to stand. We can't have them exist at the end of this war.
Even in this latest ceasefire proposal, which we'll get into, Israel has said, we'll stop shooting if you release the hostages. So do you have any hope that Hamas would listen to that?
I think the only way to release the hostages is if Yahya Sinwar, the commander of Hamas, and the leadership of Hamas know that their hours are over and that we're minutes away from killing them and destroying that leadership. And then the deal needs to be, we will not kill you, we'll allow you to get on a boat and get out of Gaza if you release the hostages. I think the half-hearted efforts or conducting of the war right now by the Israeli government, coupled with the American administration slowing down IDF all the time, I think that is self-defeating, because the quicker, the faster we move in, the quicker we'll have a deal.
When you say half-hearted, you have said we should have been, talking about the IDF, when I say we should have been inside Rafah months ago.
That's right. I think there's way too much talk. We're going to do Rafah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. Just do it. Just do it. We can destroy Hamas, and we can make that one offer to them. We will allow you to live, but expel you from Gaza if you release the hostages. Right now, Yahya Sinwar is playing a cat and mouse tactic with us, just biding time, because the overall strategy right now of Iran, of Hamas, of Hezbollah is to exhaust Israel. Just last night, Hezbollah shot dozens and dozens of rockets on the Galilee. The Galilee is burning. Almost 100,000 people have been evacuated from their homes. Imagine if in El Paso, Texas, there were 100,000 people living now 8 months in hotels or motels because their homes are burning. That's what we're facing. We have no choice. We have to win.
Joe has a question for you, Mr. Prime Minister. Joe?
Yeah, Mr. Prime Minister, what's been your response? What's your reaction to families of hostages saying the Netanyahu government hasn't done enough to focus on bringing those hostages home?
Well, when I give interviews abroad, I typically don't criticize my own government. I think that the efforts have been feeble in terms of focusing on Yahya Sinwar. You can't conduct a war turning it on and off like a light switch. I was a soldier, I was a commander. If we just have several weeks to go in with all the force necessary and tell Yahya Sinwar the only way you'll live is if you raise a white flag and release the hostages, we can get this done. But we keep on wavering, vacillating on this. This is not how you can bring results.
So it's your opinion that actually a full-scale invasion of Rafah would bring the hostages home more quickly?
Look, yes, obviously there's no guarantee here. It's a heart-wrenching situation. I think that the current approach of thinking that we can reach this amazing deal where all the hostages will be released, I think it's naive. And it means that you don't understand what we're dealing with. And the only way that we get results is if they understand their time is out. And I want to say one last thing. We sealed the corridor called the Rafah corridor that basically is the border between Sinai and Gaza, which means that from about a week ago, Hamas can no longer replenish its arms, so time is running out for them. People are not aware of this. So if we just follow through, I think we can get the best results possible.
Let's talk about the quote destruction of Hamas, a phrase that's been thrown around a good bit. Is that the killing of all of Hamas leaders, or is that the expulsion of Hamas from Gaza as an effective governing force? Because I believe the Biden plan does say that part of that plan expels Hamas from Gaza as a governing force.
The latter. What I would envision is the leadership of Hamas, either we take them out and kill them, as we've done to several, or similar to Beirut of 1982, we get them on a ship, several thousand of the leadership of Hamas, get them out, and then we can begin the rebuilding of a new Gaza and build a new future for everyone.
So, Mr. Prime Minister, let's talk about this deal that President Biden unveiled publicly on Friday. He framed it as the Israeli deal. This is something that he said the government had agreed to, but we heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu say, well, no, not quite. Can you explain the disconnect?
Well, there is a degree of disconnect. The bottom line, though, I think it's moot, because I don't think there is a deal. I think it's an illusion. I don't think Yehia Sinwar will release the hostages. He might release several of them to dangle and bide his time, but he's playing around with us. There's no reason to believe that he would release the biggest asset that he's acquired unless he sees his death coming.
So U.S. officials say, though, they're saying that part of the divide here was the agreement that the Israeli military would withdraw from Gaza. Is that something that the government would consider?
Look, I read the press and I heard that Netanyahu offered that sort of thing. I think that we have to retain the Rafah corridor, the Netzarim corridor. Otherwise, what we'll see is a very rapid rebuilding of Hamas, and we'll see another October 7th, perhaps in 2025 or 2026. And they won't release the hostages. They may release a few hostages, because they've got 120 of them. They're not going to release all the hostages. No way, unless he sees tanks coming over. That's the only option that'll bring that result. I know this guy.
Well, that's the leverage he has, is holding the hostages.
Yes, and the leverage
loses it.
Exactly, but the leverage we need to create is an imminent and immediate threat on his life and the lives of leadership. And it's not, if we just follow through and stop this vacillation, we can do it. I fought Hamas. I fought Hezbollah. It was many years. We can do this. This is not the most complicated thing on earth. And by the way, we're doing it with very low civilian casualties right now. We managed to move about 1 million citizens away from harm's way, contrary to what was being told to us that we can't do it. It would take months. It took about 10 days.
Despite your best efforts to spare civilians, as you know, Hamas uses civilians as human shields. We know all that. Just last week, there was the attack on a tent camp, an explosion that ensued. 45 people were killed in grisly pictures. As a commander, should more care be taken, as someone who was a commander, more care be taken to avoid the civilian casualties on the merits of not killing women and children, of course, but also the way it turns public opinion against Israel?
Well, I want to correct you. We did not attack the tent camp. We attacked and took out 2 leaders with a very precision weapon.
But it killed 45
No,
other people.
it did not kill. What happened was those people were hiding within ammunition, and that ammunition that Hamas cynically placed under them, RPGs and explosive, they exploded. It was a secondary explosion. So essentially Hamas murdered its own people. Let's be very clear.
But that's just the point. Hamas hides behind civilians. So how do you, if you're going after Hamas, how do you avoid civilians?
If Hamas is determined to kill its own people, there's nothing I can do to stop it. We cannot prevent Hamas from killing its own people. Just yesterday, let me tell you a story. In one of the houses under the bed of a 10-year-old girl in Gaza, there was a ammunition depot with RPGs and explosives. There's no way in the world that we can prevent Hamas from killing its own people, and it wants to do that because it knows you're going to ask me those questions, and it applies pressure on Israel. The way to do away with it is if everyone pressures Hamas and not Israel and points the finger at Hamas. Stop killing your own people. Stop hiding explosives under civilians.
Joe?
Mr. Prime Minister, let me ask you, first of all, about the state that we find ourselves in right now. We have both, I'm sure you know this or else you wouldn't come on the program, we have been extraordinarily critical of Hamas and have said from the very beginning that when they kill a Jew, that's good news. When a Palestinian is killed, that's great news for Hamas. We certainly understand that equation. We also understand the terrible, terrible toll it's taken on the Gazan people and also on Israel's reputation across the globe. I want to ask you about where we are right now, though. It seems to be the worst of all worlds, where the IDF is frozen in place. Gazans are starving. Gazans are not getting the medical care they need. It's almost like a siege. And it seems to be the worst of all worlds. Is that one of the reasons why you're saying the IDF needs to be able to go into Rafah and finish off Hamas, finish this war off, and start the rebuilding?
Precisely. It's you take off a Band-Aid quickly. You don't do it slowly. And you can't fight a war with an on and off button. You just can't. I was a fighter, and it's impossible. When you hit your enemy, Hamas, you punch him in the face and he's wobbling. What you do not do is tell him, take a month off, get better, come back and fight another day. And this lack of continuity, lack of determination, coupled with American pressure on us to go slower, is a mistake. This could have been over 3-4 months ago if we just followed through. I think both governments are not conducting themselves in an optimal way.
What does Gaza look like in your eyes after Hamas is expelled, after hopefully the hostages are released, after there's some semblance of control? Do you believe that the Israelis should take control of Gaza, or do you believe in the possibility of an international peacekeeping force with the United States and your Arab neighbors?
Well, I'd envision the model of post-World War II Germany, where the first phase is, first of all, defeating the Nazis, and we've not yet finished that. Then I would put in place an interim appointed government of competent Egyptians primarily, Palestinians, Saudis, Emirates, while Israel retains the security responsibility. We don't want to govern Gaza. There's no desire, so in that sense, it's simple. This would go on several years. It could be 5-6 years, in which period we'd also discontinue the incitement. So they'd have to stop teaching kids that Jews are pigs, etc. Stop it in the media, stop it in the mosques. And within 6, 7, 8 years, we see how it develops. Then we could hand over to self-governance. We do not want to govern Gaza. We have no desire whatsoever for anything from Gaza. For heaven's sakes, we pulled out of Gaza in 2005. We handed it over to the Palestinians. So there's no territorial fight here. We have a terror state that wants to destroy Israel, and we don't want to be destroyed.
Do you see any third party, any outside force? Is it Qatar, for example, who could apply any pressure on Hamas to release the hostages, to accept some kind of deal?
I think Qatar could do much more. I think Qatar is playing a very dirty game, a double-faced game. They pretend to be Western and an advanced country, but they in many ways are helping, together with Iran, to foster terror for many years. Yeah, they could pressure Hamas for the simple reason that right now the Hamas leadership is living in hotels in Doha, Qatar, and they could tell them, look, if you don't get the hostages released, we'll kick you out, and let's see you live in Damascus or Tehran, which is not as pleasant.
By the way, President Biden spoke to the Emir of Qatar yesterday with a similar message.
This Emir and the Qataris have blood on their hands.
Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks for being here today. We appreciate it.